during the executive session, there was no action taken in the special call board meeting.
Greenwood Leflore Consolidated School District Work Session, Wednesday, June 24th, 2024, 30. Dr. Brown. Chair entertains a motion to adjourn our special call meeting. It's been motioned and second. All in favor? Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion is carried. And now our work session, Dr. Brown.
First, you have the data reports. We'll start with our summer feeding program, Mr. Johnson.
What you have is a list of dates starting from June the 1st of the actual attendance and meals that were served for students. You can look from June the 1st, we had 680 meals served. On June the 3rd, we had 945 meals served. June the 8th, 935 meals served. And on June the 15th, 1,035 meals served. June the 18th, 1,015 meals served, and that's all we have at this present time.
So next we have in your packets, MDE's considerations for school reopening. And they give us, or they gave us 3 schedules, examples of schedules that we could follow, which one will be the traditional schedule. And that allows for all of our students to attend school each day in the regular classroom setting. Because we lack the spacing due to the social distancing requirements, this is one of the schedules that we were not able to use as we planned, and we're still planning. So we moved to the hybrid schedule, and the information regarding that schedule, or the definition for that schedule, is found on page 11. But this is a schedule that combines both online and face-to-face instruction for students. So as we are planning, we know that we will have to follow some form of the hybrid schedule, as well as offer the virtual schedule as well, which means that this type of instruction is provided through distance learning. So as we continue to plan, and I pulled my timeline calendar to kind of help me to give you an idea of where we are within the planning stages. But as we continue to plan, we do know that using a hybrid schedule, one of the things that we wanted to keep in mind was the students in grades pre-K, where we were trying to make sure that we were able to, or see if we were able to create schedules so that we could have all of our pre-K through at least 6th grade students in class every day. We have found that we don't have the spacing. The only way to make space for that was to allow our secondary students to stay at home and be providing instruction virtually. So we do understand that all students need some type of face-to-face instruction with the teachers. And therefore, we're still continuing to plan, but we know that right now we do have enough space. Our classroom spaces, we can hold about 8 to 12 students depending on the class size in each of our buildings that we are using for our pre-K through 3rd graders. So for pre-K through 3rd grade, those students, right now we're planning will attend school Monday through Thursdays. The one thing is not a hindrance, but it's one thing that we do have to look into is busing, because at this time with the CDC's recommendations, we can only have about 12 students per bus, so we're still looking into that. With the grades that 4th through high school, we will have to follow an A and B schedule. That means that some students will attend school on Mondays and Wednesdays, but be provided the virtual instruction, and then the other group of students will be attending for face-to-face instruction on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Fridays will be used for virtual instruction as well as professional development for teachers. Now, this is not set in stone because we still have to get input from stakeholders so that we can hear some of the concerns and ideas from the staff as well as the parents. But the hybrid schedule is something that we are continuing to work on. In the event that the COVID numbers increase, we know that at some point they may close schools. We are offering the virtual schedule. And so what we're going to do is to make sure we have a strong virtual schedule in place in the event that school has to close. But also we're offering a virtual schedule to give those parents who are just not sure or comfortable in sending their kids back to school, to give them that option so that those students will be provided instruction online. But that is also going to take training for not only our teachers and students, but our parents, so that we can provide that type of training so that they're able to assist, but also know that the students will be working with teachers through that platform. And again, we're still planning. It's not, we don't have it to a place where we can comfortably say that this is how the schedule will operate, but right now we are working on it. What we wanted to do is to start getting some input from parents before we met with them, so we posted on our webpage consideration for reopening survey. And I won't read them all, but Ms. Dean has sent out robocalls and robotexts, and we do have the information posted so that we can solicit more input from the parents and the community. But the students are represented in blue, the parents and guardians red, community members with no children in the district orange, and GLCSD employees. And what we're doing as we're looking at this, and I just, for example, the first one says, after reviewing the considerations for reopening Mississippi schools published by the Mississippi Department of Education on June 8th of 2020, which schedule do you feel would be the best option for the GLCSD? What we did prior to posting this survey, we posted the MDE's considerations on our webpage and on our Facebook page, but I also created a video explaining each one of the considerations for openings for those individuals who wanted to hear more about it. And so the parents and guardians and students, employees were able to hear as well as read the information that MDE sent out prior to completing these surveys. And so if you look at, and this is just right now 1,503 responses, and we're going to leave this up until July 1st because that's when we will begin our getting input from our parents. But if you look at it right now, 43.7% of our parents say that the virtual schedule will work best for, community members, work best for students. And the parents are saying 30.9%. So even when we look at these percentages, we ask ourselves at the district level, what can we do to reassure parents that it's safe we're taking all precautions or all measures so that we can bring kids to school? How can we work to make sure that parents are reassured that kids can come to school? And some of the ideas we talked about was to create videos showing parents what a social distance classroom looks like and how the students will be seated, how students will enter and exit the buses and sitting on buses, what are the sanitation measures that we will take, how are our classrooms going to be disinfected. Mr. Johnson has already started with his team putting up our new water fountain machines and just being able to actually show parents visually through videos and so that they will be able to see what is taking place or what changes we're making in the district to keep kids safe. We know it's not 100% certain that students or even faculty and staff won't contract the coronavirus, but we're going to make sure that on our end, we're putting every safety measure in place prior to bringing kids back to school. But also, when kids get to school, we still have to train them on, which side of how to walk down the hallways, or making sure that with the staff that everything is sanitized. So when we look at the responses, we are looking at the number and who's responding, but we want to make sure that it's helping us to plan what can we go, how can we think more outside of the box to reassure our parents. When we looked at question 2, it says, when do you think students should physically return to school buildings? We put August, September, October, and then green represents once vaccinations are available to the general public. And seeing that right now we know that the green option, vaccinations have not, we don't have those, we still have to go back to what can we put in place and how can we reassure parents that it's safe to bring kids back to school. And for those who have those compromised immune systems, we do offer virtual schedules, but even after we do everything that we can to reassure parents, if they're still not comfortable, then how do we reassure parents that virtual learning is going to be of quality? So those are some of the things that we look at. And I'll just go with the third one and the fourth one. Assuming that schools will be allowed to open in August, would you send your child to school? And if you see about almost 60% of the parents say no, but that goes back to right now this is new. So what do we need to do as a district to reassure parents that it is safe to send kids to school? So when we look at this, we're not looking to say, okay, well, over half are not going to bring theirs. It is how do we get them here? And that goes back to putting those things in place to make sure that we're communicating that we're going to take the precautionary measures so that students are safe at school. And that last one, and I won't go through the rest, but it says, my child or children will be in the indicated grade range and will be arriving by the indicated mode of transportation. And so we use bus, car rider, and walker. And again, you see most of the responses, parents are electing to drive their students to school. And that's perfectly fine. It also helps us as we plan bus rides, but we're going to plan bus rides as if we have to still transport all of our students. But again, when we look at the results, the first thing that comes to mind is, okay, parents are still uncertain. So how do we reassure them that the GLCSD is safe for them to bring their children to school? And so we want to leave this document or this survey out so that we can give parents and students and employees an opportunity to give us more feedback, and then we will go into having our Zoom and go-to meetings with our parents. And so if you look on this next page, plans for reopening school. Now we did start planning in April, and so we met with a group of the Delta superintendents and their teams yesterday. So I wanted to share what summer June would look like, or what summer June planning looks like for us. And this is how I keep track of what I'm doing, but each one of the other superintendents have their own timeline. But what I share with them, and this doesn't include everything that we do, but having those reopening discussions with assistant principals is something that we started doing, as well as training the assistant principals and the principals on those virtual distance learning platforms that we have, such as Google Classroom. The assistant principals are receiving training in Google Classroom. The principals are receiving training in Canvas, and making sure that that's ongoing for us all, because we have to understand it before we implement it. And then if you look at, we've been working on master schedules with the principals and assistant principals. We've been looking at nutrition, the food service, and Mr. Johnson will talk about that, but making sure that we communicate how our students will receive lunch on the days that they're not in school, because we're still responsible for making sure that they have breakfast and lunch. And so we met with our chiefs and specialists. We're discussing reopening plans, and even though I'm saying discussing, we're listening to the feedback that everybody is, because everybody knows that what concerns they are hearing or may hear, and just being able to hear from everybody. Also, the MDE posted their reopenings on June 8th. And we had a plan in place, but what we did was we went ahead and reposted it and created the video so that parents could see it. And I go down the Delta area superintendents. We met on June 10th in Greenville to share and discuss plans of options. And then they came back on June 22nd to Greenwood and we presented our plans to the Delta area districts. I did meet with the Board of Trustees, and that'll be ongoing to, first of all, share the plan, give you some time to think about it, and then give us more feedback regarding the possible reopening schedules. Classified staff, I'm going to move their day, but I want to meet with classified staff, want to talk to them about what school will look like and how it will operate, but also to get their feedback on the things or that they may, or ideas that they'll have. And then with the certified staff, and we'll continue to have ongoing meetings with the executive leadership team. So beginning in July, I want to have as much, a lot of conversations with parents and guardians, and I know students will be present on those calls, but we want to do this by school so that we're able to share information and hear the concerns for specific schools. One in particular would be Claudine Brown. One of the issues we found at Claudine Brown is still an open concept school, although it has some walls built up or kind of like partitions. Because of social distancing, we won't be able to get all of those students in that school at one time each day, as well as like I said, the walls are not closed in, so it's still open concept. And so one of the ideas, one of the things we talked about, the MDE recommended also that you spread your students across the districts to accommodate, especially in the lower grades. And so with Claudine Brown, after speaking with the principal, we met with the principal, Claudine Brown, to discuss some of the issues at Claudine Brown. We have been talking about possibly moving those students to a bigger building, a larger building. Until COVID-19, the numbers decrease and we're able to put our kids back in their regular classrooms. I have heard some concerns. I've heard of some people saying we're closing Claudine Brown. That is not the case. Claudine Brown will not hold all of her students, all of its students in one location, but it's still open concept over there at Claudine Brown. And so I want to talk to the parents at each specific school so that I can hear from Claudine Brown's parents, but also talk to them about some of the other issues that we have with keeping those children in that building with COVID-19 here during this pandemic. So as of now, we're still planning in both places, but having going out and doing the legwork and just researching. We want to have enough information before we talk to parents so that if they have questions, we're able to answer those questions because we've been out there and we're looking and we can tell them or be more informed with our responses to them, but to also help them to understand that this is a sensitive issue and we're trying our best to put the children's health first. So as it pertains to Claudine Brown, that was one school. We have to possibly, we're looking at trying to see if we can get fourth graders here 4 days a week, and we're looking for other areas that can hold students. But what we do for one grade group, we have to do for all, and that's because of we just consolidated, so we don't want one grade level at any particular school to say that we're giving preferential treatment to another group. So what we're trying to do is to just make it even across the board. So right now, throughout all of our schools, we know that we have room for pre-K through third grade, Monday through Thursdays. The issue comes when you get to the 4th, 5th, 6th, and the middle and high schools. And so this is what we're doing our best to try to find spaces for those individual students. And so, and I'm using Claudine Brown as an example because that's one that I heard about, but before we do anything, we want to make sure we have enough information so that when we do talk to the parents of Claudine Brown, we'll be able to answer questions for them also, but keeping in mind that the priority is safety for our kids. And so we don't want to just go and make a rush decision. We want to get all of the input that we have and all of the information before we move forward about any school. And so with this timeline, and this is just something we shared yesterday with we shared with the other superintendents to show them how we are holding ourselves accountable, but just keeping track with what we're doing in the Greenwood Leflore district. And so we also talked about school reopening. Because of busing, we're only allowed to have, we're going to follow the suggestions from the CDC so that we will make sure we're doing everything that was suggested so that parents will be reassured, but we don't want to take any risk or do something different that will cause any harm to any student, faculty, or staff. So with that being said, we have buses, and Mr. Johnson, Ms. Hudson, they're looking at the routes and possible rerouting and pickups for students. So when the next time or very soon when we show you the master schedules, there'll be 2 start times. The reason we're not able to do the half and half days, start in the morning, bus them out, bus a group back in and bus them out. We don't have capacity as it pertains to buses and drivers. And then some of the routes are so long that it will take kids a while. You can pick them up, but it'll take them a while to get back home. But even when picking them up, you still have to drop group A back off and then bring the other students back to school. So we came up with 2 options, and we're going to share those with the board. We have a Schedule A and a Schedule B, where one group will be picked up and classes will begin for them at 7:45. And that will give the buses time to go back and pick up the second group, and they will come and classes will begin for them at 8:30. But once we show you a visual of it, and we're just trying to put a few more pieces in it and hear a few more suggestions. But once you see the master schedule, you kind of see where we're trying to go along. And when we shared it with the other area superintendents, we were hoping to receive some feedback from it. But for the most part, I think everybody's probably going in the same direction, and that was the purpose of the meeting, for all of the Delta area superintendents to get together so that we will all be on similar pages, because we have some districts that only have 600 children, And we have almost 5,000 and we're spread across the county. And so I'm going to yield and ask Mr. Johnson to speak about the busing and Dr. Pulley and Ms. Colvin to speak in their areas.
In organizational support, you know, dealing with transportation, that's gonna be one of our biggest issues this coming school year, just based on the number of drivers, the number of buses we have, and the requirements of only being allowed 12 students per bus. And then also the cleaning and disinfecting of each bus doing in between routes. So based off that, and I spoke with Dr. Brown and the leadership team to just say that with transportation, it's gonna be a trial and error. Once we start, we have mapped out routes. We know we're gonna target certain areas. We know how many pickups we have. And I'll give an example. We may have 60 people being picked up in Middle City, so we're gonna send out about 6 buses to get that group, transport them back, and then we target them in different areas based off the number of buses. So we'll be sending, I'll give an example, maybe sending 6 buses to Brazil to pick up. Maybe we getting them all at one time, bring them to wherever their destination, then go and target another area. So until we actually doing it, the timing, we have to kind of work that out once we actually start doing it. And plus we're going off of projected numbers. So we don't know the actual numbers yet. Then of course we're looking at surveys and seeing some people may be driving students, so we may not be as cumbersome as we think. But we just preparing as though that we transport all our students. Then of course we're gonna have those A and B days where we're gonna be transporting. We know pre-K through third every day, and then looking at those numbers as it adjusts when we going between different grade levels. So with that said, with transportation, it's gonna be a very problematic problem, but we think we have some things in place to kind of make it work out to be able to do what we need to do as a district in educating our students. On the maintenance side, getting buildings together, we're still working on getting orders. And as you know, suppliers are limited, and then we also have to still follow our purchasing guidelines. In trying to outfit 12 schools, in most cases, any order that we place is going to be over the 50,000 mark, which causes us to we have to go through the bidding process. What I'm proposing, just looking at the water fountains and some of the other things, we'll be looking at trying to do reverse auctions to go ahead and get those taken care of so we can place those orders as soon as possible. Because most of the quotes that we're getting now put us in the range where we actually have to go out and do bids instead of taking quotes. On the food services side, we're preparing to feed students in the classroom. That means that they will have limited movement throughout the school. That would include breakfast and lunch being served in their particular room that they will be stationed in all day, as well as for those students that will be doing the A and B schedule, preparing those meals for the next day. I'll give an example. If I have a group coming on Monday that may not be coming Tuesday, not only are they getting breakfast and lunch that Monday at school, our cafeteria staff have to prepare the meals for breakfast and lunch for Tuesday to send home with them that Monday. So we'll be working through that as well, and working with our schools and our staff at our schools to make sure that we can provide those meals as needed. And I think for the most part, that's where we are now. We're still in the planning stages, and we're still trying to make sure that we are looking at each school for the capacity sizes and making sure we have everything that's needed, not only for our students but also for our teachers.
Also, Mr. Johnson, can you talk about something that came up in the Delta area superintendent's meeting? The reason why we are not using plexiglass on our buses or mounting things on our buses.
One of the things was insurance-wise, if you making any bus without prior approval through not only the company or the insurance company, you are subject to be liable, or you subject not to be covered under insurance if anything was to happen. For example, if a student was on the bus and had an accident, you may not be covered because you made alterations to the bus without approval. Then also they put students in a safety situation with the plexiglass. If a bus accident happened, that could cause further injuries worse than the actual COVID. So that was one of the things that we looked at and decided that right now we will try to stick within what the guidelines are suggesting, and if they give us any other leeway, then we'll make adjustments as we see to be.
Dr. Brown, I have a question for, what you planning along with what the CDC guidelines are. So what's gonna happen if a child comes or a teacher comes, or like it could be in your central office, if you become exposed to COVID-19, what, is there a plan for that?
Right, so we listened to Dr. Dobbs yesterday from MDE. Prior to listening to him, we knew that if anybody contacted or contracted the virus, we would have to shut. Just say if a child in a classroom contracted the virus, then we would have to shut the school down. We knew that prior to listening to him. However, he's supposed to send us out specifics, how many students can contract a virus in a school before you shut it down. And yesterday the number was 3. And so that's why we are pushing to make sure we have a solid virtual learning plan, because we know that even with the increased numbers, somebody's going to contract the virus. So for us, what we're trying to do is make sure that the district has everything in place so that if in the event that a child or a staff member contracts the virus, we've done everything we could do to prevent it. In the central office, same thing. One thing we're doing, even in the offices, are doing the alternating schedules so that we won't have so many people in the building at once. So they are able to log on and work from home, and you're able to see it and then come in the afternoon, so that if you have 12 people working in central office, 6 will work at home in the AM and come to work in the PM on Mondays and Wednesdays. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, those schedules will swap out. Prior to students getting on the buses, and that'll be a part of our video showing students how to social distance at the bus stop. But we're also looking into having bus monitors on each bus so that the students' temperatures are taken, names are recorded, as well as temperatures prior to them getting on the bus. We want to talk to parents because we want them to be aware that we cannot allow students who have temperatures to get on buses. So if they're bringing kids to the bus stop and dropping them off, just possibly having somebody available so that if that is the case, then they'll know that we cannot expose the other kids on the bus. And the bus monitor will be there not only to make sure students remain seated on buses, but that we practice in a social distancing. When we looked at some equipment, I know we have our hand thermal thermometers, but we've had two companies to come in with facial recognition scanners / temperatures, and possibly with the CARES money buying those, one of each to place at the entrance of school buildings. And so what they would do is they would scan employees and children prior to them entering the building, but also using that hopefully for clocking in, so that once it recognizes our employees' faces, they're clocked in. But it also will give us an alert if anybody who is either not a student in our system or an employee, if there's a stranger who's entered the building, but capture their picture. So we're still looking into that also, because we're trying to get away from the touching time clocks. And so we've had now 3 companies to come in to show us that equipment. And those are some of the things that we're working on. We have, I got to tell you about that, Ms. Johnson. We have tomorrow a webinar with a nurse practitioner, and she's going to talk to us about, we're going to see if I think Mr. Johnson, it was the email that the nurses were checking on. we're trying to see, about getting, or how we can get, if we require staff to be tested, you know, we're trying to see how we can either get it for free or just to monitor that. But this nurse practitioner and this company will be presented to us tomorrow, and they have some equipment that will possibly get results quicker than 3 to 5 days. So that if employees have been exposed and we recommend that they be tested, we're able to refer them or send them to this particular company. But we're gonna look at that also. And that's another thing, just putting those procedures in place, that if an adult or if a student has been exposed, we do know that they'll have to be quarantined for 14 days. But that goes back to a strong, a solid virtual schedule for our students, so that they won't miss a beat at all. Somebody mentioned about the alternative school. We know that, well, we don't even anticipate having students in alternative school this year. And that's the good thing about having a virtual schedule. Any misbehavior, and during this time, we hope not, they're able to go home and work virtual. Dr. Pulley has also been working on a schedule, and I'll let him share that, where if we are online or, we will be virtual, students will know based upon their schedule when they're supposed to log into each teacher's classroom. And teachers are going to take attendance using those logins. Ms. Coleman is working with her team, so we're going to provide some training on how to, even through a virtual classroom, how to, if they're in student discipline, just classroom management training through virtual instruction. And so, Dr. Pulley, you talk about our schedules.
What we want to do is to make sure that our students and our parents recognize that, hey, it's not like our extended school closure time. And here's the example. Our last day in school was March 6th, and then every district, and including us, we were scrambling. Okay, what do we do? Well, we knew we had already, and so that was one of the online platforms that we used in order to finish the year, as far as to implement some distance learning for our students. But what we wanted to make sure was that, hey, how do we really know? We had the usage reports to show how many students, and we would show you all how many students were logging in per week. But with Canvas and with our learning guidelines and schedules, what we want to be able to do is to know if we have assigned this 4th grade group to math during this particular time from 8 to 9:30, then the teacher will be able to, or the online facilitator will be able to identify which kids are logging in, which assignments they're completing, which interactive videos they're watching and participating in. And so we have created a draft of distance learning schedules for every grade, even pre-K through 3. With pre-K through 3, these students right now, we know that they're going to come to school each day. And so we're seeking the input from that grade level of teachers and some of our chiefs who work in that grade level to make sure that their schedules are age appropriate. You know, we don't want our pre-K through 3 schedules to look like our 8th grade schedule. So we are working with them to adjust those schedules to make sure that they work for our students. But at the same time, we want to make sure that two things we want to do and that we have been doing is focusing on high quality training for our teachers and staff, and then what does high quality learning look like in a virtual environment for our students. At the end of the day, we still have to have high academic expectations for our kids. And then, so if we know we're going to the virtual environment, and many teachers and staff, we've never worked through a virtual environment. So right now, our principals have gone through the initial Canvas training. Our assistant principals have gone through the initial Google Classroom training. More trainings are to come. Myself and our Chief of Technology, we're going to work to train our district level staff as it relates to Canvas, and then also the company is scheduling that time to definitely get our staff trained on Canvas. We just want to make sure that even though we're moving to the virtual schedule, as Dr. Brown has said, we want to reassure our parents that our students we are committed to making sure that our students receive the highest quality of education possible, even through this situation. One thing that we are definitely working to make sure that our teachers are able to do, even if I am sixth grade and I am at home for 2 days a week, that sixth grader, when he or she logs into Canvas, still can see his or her teacher demonstrating the particular assignments through the Canvas video, or still can be able to hear the teacher's feedback as relates to the assignment for that particular day. And so that's what we're working on, just to make sure that we're providing that training for our staff so that we'll be able to deliver it for kids. We know it's taking a lot of training to do that, but at the same time, as it stands right now, MDE has not waived the testing requirement. And so we have to still, and not just simply for the test, but we don't want our students to go a whole year and seem as if, we dropped the ball somewhere. Also, it was in the MDE considerations. What we're doing and have done with our pacing guides, and pacing guides, we've used it to show what teachers should be teaching each week. We added, the MDE consideration was to revise pacing guides for the next school year to include remediation time, to address the learning gap that kids may have had in the 4th and 9th week. Because we got out so early, kids, there could have been skills that they have missed or forgotten. And so we're already, we're done with elementary, and we're done with from K through 8th grade. Revising those pacing guides to add the additional time in there so we can address any skills that students may have forgotten or lost, or just, in case teachers did not get to it before we left. And so we are working to definitely do everything that we can to make sure that we keep academics, safety is first. We definitely want to keep our students safe. But once we have them in there, we got to make sure that our teaching and our learning is as excellent. I'm going to use that word, as excellent as it can be.
Dr. Moore, you wanted to hear from the chiefs about, okay.
Dr. Fuller, what do you all have in place for those students, and you're gonna have this problem, that cannot log in? You don't have some spots in the county where they're gonna be internet issues, so how are you all gonna address that?
Well, one thing that we have already discussed is that we will seek to have the ready materials, and that's pretty much a textbook that will allow students to have, instead of us trying to print packets over and over and over again or post them, if we have the ready materials, it is content specific, reading and math, every skill that's there for the Mississippi curriculum standards, that they're covered in those particular books. And then also for students who can now, we did have a conversation about finding a way to identify who those particular students are per area, and then trying to figure out what can we possibly do if we even have to hold some type of sessions where we bus them. That was just a thought. It may not be that many students, but if we use a setting such as this, if we use, to where we could get our students in that cannot and do not have any access to the technology. But one thing that we are doing is, I know there have been some conversations, Dr. Brown, you may have where they're trying to, Greenwood was an area where they're looking at to, for those areas that, lack the technology. Greenwood was an area listed, in our rural areas where they would come and, add that particular connectivity to ensure that students in those, outlying areas do have access to it. But we will pay attention definitely to that, because we don't want students, 2 days a week they're in school with us, and then the other 2 they feel like they can't get anything. So we don't want to create an equity issue where students are home for 2 days and don't receive what they're supposed to be receiving.
I had a question about, students receiving special services. How are we supporting them, uh, if they are homebound, not the homebound person, but the students receiving special services, if they are if they want to be at home, what are we doing to support them at home, instructional wise?
Yes, ma'am. Well, we did receive guidance, and federal and state mandates say that we cannot, not serve students with disabilities. And COVID-19 was not an excuse to not provide those services. So we have a plethora of things. In addition to that, if we go back to the school closure, there were some services that were missed, some loss of skill and opportunity. And so the state has mandated that we provide compensatory services. Some of the things that we will have to do is some mass screenings. For example, dyslexia training, screening. We typically screen kindergarten students in the spring of the year. We work in for the spring of the year. First graders are screened in the fall. So when we begin school again, not only will we be screening first graders, but we will be screening those who were kindergarten last year. And those screenings must be done one-on-one. And it must be face-to-face. You can't do it virtually. In addition to the dyslexia screening, I'll give you an example. Gifted, we miss gifted. First graders are screened in the spring of the year. We miss them. So when school starts, we have to fill in the gaps of those that we missed. What we've done in the department is we've identified what services we can provide virtually and which services we definitely cannot. So some things will be one-on-one, some will have to be face-to-face, and those others can be screen face-to-screen-face. We're going to have an increased evaluation, so our department is actually working now, trying to work ahead before school even starts to kind of catch some things. For those students with those compromised immune systems, serious or chronic health issues, their placement may be impacted. For example, if they were in a self-contained setting, they may now have to be homebound. Or if they were in the inclusion setting, we may now have to homebound them. And so we do have staff identified to serve the homebound students. That's including those that are in district, Gilliam, the Head Start, the health department, 3-year-olds. So we have a large population of people that we have to serve. We've also identified that there's going to be an increase in those that require social services. Some of our kids with social and emotional deficits are struggling, and so the social workers are working with them now. Any change in environment or any change in the daily activities of those students, it changes them. That's why there's going to be a focus on the classroom management in a virtual environment, because what we're asking the students to do is different from what they're accustomed to. Certain students in our population, for example, our autistic students, this is a struggle. And we found that we work with our related services this summer, and we have just determined some of those things cannot be done virtually. We are seeking related service providers, interpreters, occupational therapists, physical therapists, and speech therapists that will be working more with not just the students, but more with parents. So when we have those times when students cannot be at school, if they're on an A or B schedule, that those related service providers will have to work with the parents. And the parents will have the same communication devices that the kids will have. So for some of our parents, they will have maybe not a Chromebook or a laptop, because their child's service will require them to be engaged in providing the service. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. It was very, thick and thorough. Are we still going to be, implementing that multi-tiered system?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I would be concerned with those teachers who have to go into those homes.
We are limiting home visits.
That's a compromise.
It is. This year, we are limiting home visits. That's why we're going to be pushing to get those devices to the parents so that we will have an avenue to speak with them and to work with them. We do have some liability with physical therapy. We have to be careful with asking parents to do a physical therapy that they're not trained to do. It's a little easier to do with speech and occupational or even interpretation services. But that's why we're going to be getting those technology devices not only to the children but to the parents so that we can keep those lines of communication open. Additionally, our parents and students, our 504 students, we had parent meetings. We met with every parent. We're going to be revisiting those meetings because during this school closure, we know that the needs of the child may have changed and that the parent is the best person to provide us with the most up-to-date information and the needs of the child. We can't hit and miss. We can't estimate it. We're going to have to get it exactly from the parent, and we may have to do some additional evaluation and screening.
And you did say that the screening schedule is going forward this summer. You're
Yes,
gonna
ma'am.
start early with that.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
You will be possibly approving these manuals, and once they get approved, superintendent signs, we're projected to start first week of July. We're ready now, actually. We have some parents who reached out and we're ready. Social workers are busy at work.
To go back to Ms. Lewis asked a question about the rural area, I think Mr. Johnson wanted to comment on that. One thing that the MDE, and we've had some conversations about it also, is possibly find a way to partner with maybe some of the churches in the rural areas where they can serve as drive-up, hotspot places for parents or children to just come up and park in the parking lot to work. And I think that's what MDE is working to see if that can happen. Greenwood, Leflore County is actually listed as one of their top priority places to place towers or something in those areas. But we talked about just how can we find a way to possibly partner with some of the local churches or some buildings in those areas so that those children will have stronger access points. Mr. Johnson.
And one of the things that T-Mobile did offer was signal boosters. If we do know of students, if they would make it known that they're having internet issues in those rural areas, they'll provide what they call a signal booster, and they would send us shipments of those once we know how many and what areas those are. They would provide that for us.
What about data capacity? My understanding is hospitals don't have so much data. So, I mean, with us, older students, like they've been home 2 days a week, I'm sure they're going to do the data so they can call them.
And I can address that. That would be one of those things right now. They do have what is considered the unlimited plan, but that would double what we're actually paying now. So what we're paying now per student is $10 a month. The unlimited would be $20 a month. And so that would be one of those things that we would have to look at as a board.
This part is hard to do, I mean, also to explain just the chief role in providing that some training for our teachers in this virtual environment and what does that look like for the upcoming school year.
Good evening. Basically what we've been working on over in the curriculum department with the new changes, we've met with some of the teachers today. I met with the math teachers because one of the things we're going to have to do, not only will they need training with Canvas, we're also going to be working with them for live streaming, how to live stream their classes, because we're looking at some of those. There are a lot of uncertainties right now, no definite things done, because we're waiting to see what programs we'll be using, because a lot of programs we won't necessarily need, but for those that 2 days that the students are not there, the teachers will upload videos of their instruction, and it'll be a continuation of the week. So let me try to give you a picture. I am teaching, my kids are coming on Monday and Wednesday. So on Tuesday and Thursday, they're not there. So I'm going to video, I'm going to teach my lesson. We are doing pacing guides. And I have 5 days to teach this standard. So one day, I will teach them in person. I have a video that of my instruction that they'll need to watch on Tuesday when they're not there and do the assignments in Canvas. And I'll pick back up on that lesson on Wednesday when they return and continue that instruction. And then I'll have a video that I post in Canvas for the Thursday instruction and activities that they'll be responsible for doing. And so it'll be a continuous week of instruction. So in doing that, because Canvas is new, will be new to teachers, it's going to be important that they receive all the training in Canvas, knowing how to upload the videos, the assignments, and just make it a continuous flow so that our students are receiving technically 5 days of instruction. One of the things, and it hasn't been proved yet, is that 5th day on Fridays, because some students will need remediation on teachers' planning periods built into the schedules. They will have the video conferencing tool, and they will send that out to their students. And if students need remediation, if I'm offering my tutorial from math tutorial from 9 to 10, at 9 to 10 they'll hit that link, and I'll be in my classroom delivering tutorial services virtually for those students who link in to receive that service. So there are a lot of things that we're working on. As things unfold and improve here, then we have to figure out, well, what's the best way to train teachers there. So what comes out of here, we're making a plan to make sure that we're planning for what the teachers are going to need in order to be successful and deliver effective instruction to the students.
And this one is a proposed or projected secondary totally virtual for secondary.
Yes, but remember, we're doing 2 days
Right.
in the classroom and 2 days.
I thought I understood that to be the elementary people.
Elementary will go every day, Monday through Thursday, and the rest of the students will come on the alternating schedules, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday,
And Thursday.
Okay.
Monday, Wednesday,
Tuesday.
Thursday.
Okay.
And so we want them to receive the 4 days of instruction just like elementary, but they will, 2 of their days, the teachers would have, like I talked with the math teacher, 7th grade and 8th grade math teacher, and now the one teacher today, we met virtually today to see what that would look like in pacing and all of that. So plan is for them to video their lesson. They will teach video, students receive instruction. So they will have 4 straight days of instruction. So when they're at home, they're expected to continue with that lesson. So they're not just receiving 2 days of instruction, they're receiving 4 days. And on that Friday, if we can work it in the schedule and give the teachers a 1-hour tutorial period, then they will offer tutorial remediation for those students virtually.
Thank you. So Ms. Hart,
Yes.
will they be required
what I said earlier was the A and B days. Say a student, say a high school ninth grader comes on Monday. They come to school on Monday. They get their breakfast and lunch at school. Before they leave school, the food services staff has already prepared their meals for Tuesday. So they will have already a prepackaged meal to take home with them for Tuesday. Then they'll come Wednesday. Then when they come Wednesday, they'll get the meals at school. That Wednesday before they leave, they'll have a prepackaged meal for Thursday and Friday. That's why I said it's gonna be some work on the food service staff of trying to get all those meals delivered to the room as well as preparing those sack lunches.
Now, if that become a problem, or I mean by that, I can see stuff all over the bus. You know, the pack stuff when they going home, instead of taking it home, leaving all that food on the bus, leaving it in the car, leaving it. If that becomes a problem.
Now, if that becomes a problem, we definitely gonna have bus monitors on the bus. So, and with the limited number of students being on the bus, hopefully we won't come across that issue.
It could always be given to the bus driver, and once they depart the bus, maybe give it to them then. You won't have an issue.
Okay, so, next we have the review of the agenda for the regular board meeting of Tuesday, July 7th, 2020. And we are working on, finishing up some of the job descriptions. And these are the ones that we are making changes to, or not many changes, but just revising these. And we are adding the new one, the student parent support assistant, so we'll have those. We almost finished reviewing them to make sure that they're accurate before we submit those. But that the job descriptions 1 through 19 are the ones that we're working on. Next, you have the 2021 classified salary scale. It's the same scale from last year. The only change, we took some, I wish I had the old one with me. Some of the positions that are listed on page 28, where it starts with teacher assistant down to permanent sub. The ones that were removed dealt with the computer assistants and those areas that we didn't have a need for those particular positions, then they all changed to the student parent support assistant, which is the first line at the bottom, or in the second row. Also, and this should have been left out, but we'll go back. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Graduation coach is another one. Because we're virtual, we're putting training our counselors. I'm going over the growth rubric with them, and so they will be working with students to ensure that they have all their graduation needs. Let me see. Permanent substitutes. We have, right now we are receiving and have received some of our license from our teachers who are emergency licensed. And so permanent substitutes, at this point, we don't have need for permanent substitutes because we have individuals in place for that. But this is the job description, and on the front, nothing was changed. It's the same thing from last year, this year.
So the ones that you saying that you gonna use the ones that are waiting on license, will they get paid this amount?
Well, we're using the ones, once they are granted a license.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're receiving, the ones who were approved last year were guaranteed approval this year. So we're using the individuals that we have to fill those positions.
Question, Madam President. Dr. Brown, again, as I mentioned before, looking at these salary scales, and again, they are above minimum wage. We really, as a district, need to look at what we're paying our people. Just looking at the cafeteria workers, custodians, and I think what's based on our cafeteria workers. And even on the backside, looking at the years of experience, I guess you could say, for that bottom portion of staff, we're talking about 10-cent increments. And I think as a community, the district is viewed as being very top-heavy. Even if you look at administrators, where based upon years of experience or certification, you're looking at increases of a minimum of $1,000. And how we equate, 10-cent increases, I really urge and beg the district to definitely look at, paying our people livable wages, I guess you could say. And I understand money is tight, and we need everybody. I appreciate all the work everybody does, but our people can't live off these salaries. So just consideration.
If I may, Dr. Bailey, when I tell you we just got it up this high, you'll be surprised what it was.
No
But not even a year ago.
No argument.
I promise you, you just don't know.
I'm not arguing. Like I said,
I mean, I agree with you, but I'm just saying, we just got it up to this. I mean, I understand, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, but we did just get it to this.
I was afraid to see it before.
Okay, so next we have our Dyslexia Manual, and this is, updated and been revised by Ms. Coleman and her department, as well as the 504 manual, our English learner manual, our gifted manual, and the revised MTSS procedures manual. So all of these were updated and submitted by Ms. Coleman. Do you have your special education policy? Or is it, what page? Okay. And so we'll go back and rescan the, special education policy. Just deals with the management of IDEA funds. You want to talk about that, Ms. Cole? Then we have the approval on page 192, approval of request to transfer the employees' children in the district. And that last item, the instructional management plan, Dr. Poole.
Each year we recommend for approval our instructional management plan. We did so on last year, and basically this document just describes the instructional model and activities and strategies that the district will use to build upon and improve the district instructionally and academically. In this instructional management plan includes the state standards. It must include the Mississippi College and Career standards at a minimum. Process standard, this plan also complies with our process standard 20, which states that we must have this plan in place and teachers must have access to the curriculum which we are adopting. And so what we do is we make sure that the resources that we are asking teachers to have, each teacher would have a binder of all of the curriculum resources inside of it, and all of that is outlined in our instructional management plan. And in a nutshell, that's what we have to do each year. The only difference this year, because we generally have our district assessment calendar already created, but because right now we don't know, MDE has not a statewide testing calendar just yet. And so as soon as we receive dates for that, then we will update our dates as relates to that. Also, with 4.5 and 9 weeks, the reason why we did not include the dates there, and we'll bring those back, is because of what we're dealing with right now. We don't want to schedule those assessments, and then if we have a late start or if we have to exit for any reason, then we'll have to readjust those. So when we have some pretty clear cut dates, we'll definitely bring those dates back. But as far as the plan itself, we do have to each year in July to recommend for it to be approved.
And Dr. Moore, Mrs. Daniels and Ms. Cation came in. Dr. Pulley, if you want them to add something to the question about the learning system. And Ms. Cation, I know, is working on an online instructional plan.
Definitely. We are, and we will bring it up at the next board meeting. We have, Ms. Cation, if you don't mind sharing, we are, I don't know where my, if we are, we've drafted along with Ms. Cation's lead on this, we know we have an instructional management plan, but we're working on a digital learning plan so that we can address virtual learning in four particular areas, and that's leadership, that's technology infrastructure, that's curriculum instruction and assessment, and professional learning. So, Ms. Cation.
You just about said it during the process. We know because of the COVID, we're gonna have to move our professional development to more of a distance learning, virtual type setting. So we're in the process of developing different types of PD that teachers can be participants in virtually. Also, since we're supposed to be moving to Canvas, I believe, we're trying to schedule those PDs for Canvas to get the teachers and administrators trained on how to actively use Canvas before the students come in. So we're in the process of doing that, developing those types of PDs.
And it's not in the packet, but I did want to give you hard copies of the assessment. Mr. Johnson was in charge of having someone to assess the central office. So if you have any questions, you do have the document, Mr. Johnson.
And if y'all have any questions, I can answer it at this time.
So, question, Mr. Johnson, for Dr. Brown, is it possible to maybe get this work done in stages, where, just say, for instance, the first stage is mitigate the water leakage and remove everything out of the area, and then maybe a second stage, which could possibly be next year, we come back in and paint and what have you. Or the bids are just for all the work.
The bid that they're gonna normally do is gonna be for all of the work.
Okay.
And as you can see, this was basically what they actually came in and they did the test. They tested air quality and they took actual physical samples. Like I said, if you have any questions on any of it.
Dr. Brown, were you able to find out if this project would qualify for any historical assistance, being that it is a historical building?
Not yet. I'm gonna talk to Mr. Johnson about that to see
Okay.
if we can get assistance with it. Ms. Milton, that's all we have.
Okay, adjourn. Thank you all.